Tucker Carlson. Who is this Sohrab Mari?
He's like a conservative op-ed writer who's like supposed to be like intellectual right wing.
Oh,
I think he wrote for the New York Post for a while.
All right,
that's an intellectual paper.
Let's hear their lamentations about how gosh, not only is there no room for this type of talk on the web, there's no talk about it in any sphere anymore.
We're living in an age that makes it very difficult for people like me, who is a father and a man of faith, and my children to be formed to live ordinary, decent, virtuous lives. We're actually severely disciplined in other ways, like the COVID regime or on questions of sex and gender, what we're allowed to say, critical race theory. So it's not that we're not disciplined, but the discipline orders us in some ways toward disorder. So it's very perverse. And
so is it possible we've replaced one set of disciplines with another?
Yeah, I mean, and that's in many ways the argument of the book, that there's no neutrality. A society has to stand for something. Some God, some authority will always be enshrined in the public square. The only question is which. So you can't have a society in which you say, well, I believe there are two sexes, which is what Genesis and genetics tell us, but someone else might believe, there's 135 genders. Those two, one or the other, will predominate. And what we're seeing now is, as a lot of the movement that you and I share, the conservative movement, relinquished being willing to not only say what orthodoxy is, but also enforcing it in the public square. And now a different orthodoxy is being coerced.
So you're saying the libertarian ideal is not workable, it's a lie. You can't actually kind of sit there. You're getting an orthodoxy, whether you like it or not. So it's not enough to say, you believe what you believe, I believe what I believe. No, one of our beliefs is going to be forced on the other guy.
I mean, the past 2 years have utterly demolished the idea of a neutral public square. There's no way. I mean, past few decades, really, but especially the past few years, it's just become so stark that one orthodoxy is now seeking to lord it over the rest of us, and happens to be have a very distorted anthropology, account of who human beings are, what makes them happy, what's the difference between men and women. It's in all these areas. It's extremely perverse, but it's winning.
Wait, so I'm confused by his argument a little bit. I got to admit.
Let's just quickly point out, though, that he's obsessed with children being virtuous, which is weird.
Always a little weird.
Yep.
But the guy is saying that there's no such thing as neutrality, it seems. There's always a predominant orthodoxy. But he laments the fact that the neutrality is gone, even though he sort of seemed to be arguing that theoretically it can't exist. I think he's basically just saying, like, for a long time, and what's fascinating is, like, what's happened in the past 2 years is just like his entire orthodoxy is just focused on transgender rights. What is amazing to me is how successful these people have become at completely black holing their opposition and the intensity of their opposition to gay people getting married. Like, I mean, if we were to go back in a time machine 15 years and listen to what they thought would happen when gay people got married, I mean, it was almost literally they were worried about it raining cats and dogs. You would have a total dissolution of the family. And now, like, I mean, now they're saying, like, the reigning orthodoxy, I don't know what it is in the past 2 years that has changed, other than the fact that, like, I don't know. We're not going to, as a society, be able to discriminate against gay or transgender people when it comes to, like, housing or jobs.
Well, it's just like, again, the cultural conversation. That's what the agreement's about, right? The fact that we're talking about how there's a distinction between biological sex and gender, right? We don't like that. We want to conflate the two. But what was there were two really fascinating parts for me. Fascinating, maybe I'm using it loosely, but just in terms of, when you're just observing right-wingers like this. One was how Tucker was trying really hard to lead him to like some sort of salient point on this. I don't think he was that successful, because Tucker has his own agenda in this conversation too. But also the projection on the concept of one ideology, dominating, and there's only one room for one ideology, and the left is winning, right? That's like working backwards from your kind of authoritarian tendencies of wanting your own ideology to dominate and projecting that onto the left. It's just not the case whatsoever. But,
Well, I don't know about that, because it is the case that we are attempting to say it is okay for people to express the fact and act upon the fact that they feel that the gender they were given at birth was incorrect, and we're saying it's okay, and that is the orthodoxy, I guess, that we are imposing. Just that it's okay for that to happen, right? Go ahead, Matt, jump in here. I know you want to.
Yeah, Brandon, can you play the last bit again? I just want to hear exactly what he said, but about anthropology.
Have a very distorted anthropology, account of who human beings are, what makes them happy.
Okay, so what I would have said, like distorted history, right? I thought we're talking about facts here, but when he says anthropology like that and what makes people happy, I get a sense that we need to protect our myths, and people are happy, with our Jesus myths and our whatever, basically to fend off anti-communism. And if we have people are going to be upset by frank telling of history, and that's anthropologically not something that we can risk. I think that was the really revealing thing. I think that's why you have so many Evo-psych people trying to talk about, on the right, like trying to bring in that stuff and obscure actual history that has been passed down through just inheritances still, right? Like it's not so theoretical. Like wealth created by slave owners is like only a few generations from being passed down.
Yeah, but hold on, just like the domination part is the projection part, though, Sam, from before. I mean, there's the idea that trans rights is a dominant philosophy in society, and then like that's not true. There are still incredible amounts of resistance to it, and also just, I don't think the left wants to be dominant. I think it wants to create space for people to exist in their own way.
Yes. And this guy does not like the idea, feels oppressed by a regime which allows for that. Like we had a guy on the show, I can't remember his name. I don't think you guys were here. Maybe Matt, you were, I'm not sure. Who came on the show, this Catholic guy. I can't remember who's a big, he identified himself as a Catholic. And I can't remember the guest. It was like a debate. And he was really mad about the show Chopped, because he would watch Chopped with his kids. And at one point, there was a lesbian on Chopped. Can you imagine? And Chopped, they actually visited this contestant's home and found that she was married to a woman, or maybe just living with a woman. I can't remember what the scenario was. And he's like, and my kids got exposed to that. And I don't want to live in a society where I can't watch Chopped with my kids. And so that's the orthodoxy, that you would allow, it's this permissiveness where you would allow Chopped would feel comfortable going and talking to this woman's wife. And my kids have to get exposed to that. You can't take Chopped. And I said to him, like, well, dude, like, maybe stop watching your cooking show and you won't have to expose your kids to it. But the orthodoxy is that if I want to access my cooking show, I'm going to have to be exposed to gay people being married. And that's what was so amazing to me. Like this dude saying like the past 2 years, that interview was 8 years ago, maybe 9 years ago. Like this isn't, it's always in the past 2 years, something has like dramatically changed and like our society's slipping away. No, I got news for you. The society's very slowly, very, very slowly becoming more inclusive, and they cannot stand that. I mean, they're reactionaries, and that's ultimately what it's about. And it's true. You cannot have a society where religious fundamentalism is going to dictate the way that we're organized or what rights we have or who, what we consider to be, a family unit or all these things cannot exist with a society that doesn't have fundamentalist precepts when it comes to all these questions of who human beings are and what they are allowed to determine, what is their purview as opposed to, God's. And that's from their perspective, that's fundamentalism. Like if you're not fundamentalist, everything else is also its own orthodoxy. They have to say that. They have to say that even a lack of orthodoxy is in and of itself an orthodoxy, because otherwise they have to reckon with the idea that they're trying to push their beliefs onto other people, as opposed to a society that allows for the beliefs of others to all have sort of some measure of equal weight. That's why Ann Coulter was going on about like for Democrats, their religion is government. No, it's not. It's not a religion. It's not.